The capture and challenge. The universe held no shortage of wonders, but for Dr. Elena Reeves, nothing compared to discovering the unexpected. As the lead xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Horizon, she had spent the last 6 years studying life forms across 17 exoplanets. None of her research had prepared her for becoming a specimen herself. The ambush came without warning. One moment, Elena was cataloging bioluminescent flora on the uncharted world designated KX-219, and the next, she was engulfed in a field of shimmering energy that paralyzed her limbs and clouded her consciousness. Her last clear memory was of strange, multi-limbed figures surrounding her, their voices a cacophony of clicks and whistles that somehow conveyed disappointment. This is the Death Worlder. It appears so. Fragile. Elena awoke in a chamber that defied conventional physics. The walls pulsed with a soft, bluish light that seemed to originate from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The air tasted like metal and something alien, perhaps ozone, perhaps something her human senses had no reference for. She discovered she was suspended in a field of energy, neither fully corporeal nor completely immaterial. "Subject is conscious," announced a voice that seemed to materialize inside her mind rather than enter through her ears. Preliminary scans indicate heightened neural activity consistent with advanced problem-solving capabilities. A figure materialized before her, its body an impossible assemblage of geometric shapes that somehow moved with fluid grace. It had no recognizable features that corresponded to any terrestrial species, yet Elena instinctively understood this was a sentient being of considerable authority. "I am Archon Vexthal of the Galactic Tribunal," the figure communicated directly into her mind. "You have been selected as a representative specimen of your species for evaluation and classification." Elena forced herself to remain calm, drawing on years of first contact protocols and scientific detachment. "I am Dr. Elena Reeves, xenobiologist from Earth. By what authority have you abducted me and denied my freedom?" The geometric shapes comprising Vexthal's form rearranged themselves in what might have been the alien equivalent of amusement. "Authority. The tribunal predates your species' first use of fire, human. We have cataloged and classified over 12,000 sentient species across this galactic arm alone. Your kind has only recently been identified as a potential concern." Concern. Elena's scientific curiosity momentarily overshadowed her indignation. "In what way?" "You are Deathworlders," Vexthal stated, as though this explained everything. When Elena's confusion remained evident, the Archon elaborated. "Species that evolve on planets with extreme environmental pressures develop problematic traits. Your Earth, with its violent tectonic activity, extreme weather patterns, high gravity, deadly radiation from your sun, and abundance of predators, has produced organisms with disturbing capabilities." A series of holographic images appeared around Elena, humans enduring extreme conditions that seemed mundane to her, but apparently horrified the tribunal. Climbers scaling mountains in sub-zero temperatures, firefighters rushing into burning buildings, divers plunging into crushing ocean depths, and marathon runners pushing through exhaustion. "Your species voluntarily subjects itself to pain and hardship," Vexthal continued. "You seek out danger rather than avoid it. You consume plants and animals that would poison most sentient species. Your bodies regenerate from injuries that would mean certain death for civilized beings. Most concerning, you have cognitive abilities that allow innovation under pressure, a dangerous combination with your physical resilience." Elena processed this information with growing understanding. "So you've abducted me too." "What?" "Study these traits. To determine if your species represents an existential threat to galactic stability," Vexthal corrected. "You will undergo the Crucible, a series of trials designed to assess your capabilities and potential threat level. Based on your performance, the tribunal will decide whether to quarantine your solar system or establish diplomatic relations." "And if I refuse to participate?" Elena challenged. The geometric shapes comprising Vexthal's form contracted slightly. Refusal is interpreted as hostile intent. The evaluation would conclude immediately, and quarantine protocols would be implemented. Elena understood the implicit threat. Quarantine likely meant imprisonment or worse, extinction for humanity. Then it seems I have no choice but to participate in your crucible. Wise decision. Vextal's form expanded again. The trials begin immediately. The chamber dissolved around Elena, and she found herself standing on solid ground for the first time since her abduction. She was in an expansive arena with walls that stretched upward until they disappeared into darkness. Surrounding the arena were thousands of observation platforms occupied by an astonishing variety of alien beings, all focused intently on her. The first trial assesses environmental adaptability. Vextal's voice resonated throughout the arena. Deathworlders typically demonstrate excessive physiological resilience. We will determine your limits. Without warning, the temperature plummeted. Within seconds, frost formed on Elena's eyelashes, and the moisture in her breath crystallized in the air. The cold bit into her skin like countless tiny daggers, and the rational part of her mind recognized the onset of hypothermia. But Elena had participated in polar research expeditions. She understood cold. Instead of panicking, she began methodical movement. Jumping jacks, running in place, anything to generate body heat. She regulated her breathing to minimize heat loss through respiration and curled her extremities toward her core. Among the observers, murmurs of surprise rippled through the assembly. Most species subjected to this trial either collapsed immediately or expended their energy in frantic, uncoordinated movements that hastened their demise. As Elena continued her controlled response to the cold, the environment shifted abruptly. The temperature soared, and the air became so dry it seemed to pull moisture directly from her cells. Desert heat, another condition she had experienced during fieldwork. She immediately ceased all unnecessary movement, tore strips from her uniform to create a head covering, and regulated her breathing to minimize water loss. Again, the observers registered surprise at her adaptability. Before she could fully adjust to the heat, the trial changed again. The ground beneath her feet began to tremble, then heave violently. An artificial earthquake that grew in intensity until standing became nearly impossible. Elena dropped to all fours, spreading her weight across a wider surface area, and crawled toward what appeared to be a more stable section of the arena. Throughout these rapidly changing conditions, Elena maintained not just survival but analytical thought. She observed patterns in the environmental shifts, noted the reaction of the observers, and began to formulate theories about the purpose behind these seemingly arbitrary challenges. After what felt like hours, but might have been minutes in the disorienting arena, the environmental assaults ceased. Elena stood, battered but unbowed, in the center of the now stable ground. Environmental adaptation assessment complete, Vextal announced. Subject displays remarkable homeostatic regulation and adaptive problem-solving under physical duress. Elena allowed herself a small smile. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us daily. Did you expect anything less? The second trial assesses cognitive capabilities under duress. Vextal continued, ignoring her comment. The arena transformed again, this time into a complex labyrinth filled with what appeared to be puzzles of alien design. Navigate to the center while solving each challenge. The instructions came. Failure or incorrect solutions will result in termination. Elena approached the first puzzle, a configuration of pulsating energy fields that shifted in patterns too complex to be random. She observed carefully, noting correlations between color changes and field movements. The solution required crossing through the fields in a specific sequence that corresponded to mathematical principles she recognized from chaos theory. With each puzzle she solved, the challenges grew more complex, often incorporating concepts unknown to human science. Yet Elena found that by applying first principles and observational deduction, she could determine workable solutions. What she lacked in specific knowledge, she compensated for with human adaptability and inferential reasoning. The final puzzle appeared impossible, a three-dimensional construct of symbols and energy that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. Alina studied it carefully, then did something that caused another wave of surprise among the observers. She laughed. "This is a trick," she called out, turning toward the observation platforms. "There's no solution because the parameters themselves are contradictory. This is a test of recognition, not problem-solving." For a moment, silence engulfed the arena. Then the labyrinth dissolved around her. "Cognitive assessment complete," Vexthal announced, a new note in the telepathic voice that might have been respect. "Subject demonstrates not only advanced problem-solving, but metacognitive awareness, the ability to recognize the limits of a problem space itself." Without pause, the arena transformed again. This time, Alina found herself in what appeared to be a recreation of a terrestrial environment, a lush forest that could have been from Earth, except for subtle wrongness in the colors and movements of the flora. "The third trial assesses psychological resilience," Vexthal explained. "Many species demonstrate physical and intellectual capabilities, but remain vulnerable to psychological manipulation." The forest darkened, and sounds began to emerge from the shadows. Familiar yet distorted voices calling her name, pleading for help, screaming in agony. Apparitions appeared between the trees, colleagues, friends, family members suffering horrible fates while reaching toward her. Alina felt fear clutch at her heart, but her scientific mind remained active. "Illusions," she muttered to herself, "constructed from my own memories and fears." Understanding this didn't eliminate the emotional impact, but it provided a framework to process the experience. Instead of retreating from the horrific visions or becoming paralyzed with fear, Alina walked deliberately toward them, analyzing each manifestation with professional detachment. "Interesting technique," she called out to her unseen evaluators. "You're accessing my memories to construct these scenarios. That suggests a technological capability for limited telepathic intrusion, but not complete mind reading. Otherwise, you'd know these tactics actually remind me of my works, studying trauma responses in post-conflict zones." The forest illusion flickered, then stabilized with new, more intense horrors. But Alina had found her psychological footing. "I understand what you're doing," she continued, her voice steady despite the nightmarish scenes surrounding her. "You're escalating stimuli to find my breaking point. But humans have something you may not understand. We contextualize suffering. It gives us resilience." As she spoke, Alina continued walking forward, passing through the illusions until she reached the center of the forest. There she sat cross-legged on the ground, closed her eyes, and began to regulate her breathing in a meditation technique she had learned during her fieldwork with monks in Tibet. "Psychological assessment inconclusive," Vexthal announced, the first note of frustration evident in the telepathic communication. "Subject displays atypical response patterns that resist standard evaluation metrics." Alina opened her eyes and found herself back in the original chamber, suspended once more in the energy field before Vexthal's geometric form. "3 trials completed," she stated calmly. "Is that sufficient for your evaluation?" The geometric shapes comprising Vexthal's form shifted in complex patterns before responding. "The crucible typically consists of 7 trials. No Deathworlder has ever progressed beyond the 4th. You are anomalous, Dr. Alina Reeves. Perhaps your classification system needs revision," Alina suggested. "Or perhaps you've misunderstood what makes humans unique. We don't just survive adversity, we learn from it. Each challenge makes us more adaptable, not less." For the first time, other members of the tribunal manifested in the chamber, a diverse assembly of beings representing species and forms Alina could barely comprehend. Their communications created a symphony of telepathic impressions too complex for her to follow completely. "The 4th trial awaits," Vexthal finally announced. "It will commence after a recovery period. Rest, Deathworlder. You have earned that much." As the chamber darkened and Alina felt herself drifting toward unconsciousness, she realized something significant had changed. The term Deathworlder, previously spoken with fear and disdain, now carried a different inflection, something approaching respect. Revolution and recognition. Elena awoke to find herself in a more conventional space, a room with solid walls, simple furnishings, and what appeared to be viewing portals showing the vast expanse of space beyond. As her mind cleared, she realized she was no longer suspended in an energy field, but lying on a cushioned surface that adjusted to her body's contours. "You have slept for 17 standard units," a new voice informed her. Elena turned to see a being unlike any she had encountered before. It appeared to be composed of translucent crystalline structures that shifted and flowed like liquid while maintaining a vaguely humanoid shape. "I am Lyratis, assigned to prepare you for the 4th trial," the crystalline being explained. "Your performance thus far has been unprecedented." Elena sat up, assessing her physical condition. Despite the rigors of the previous trials, she felt remarkably well rested. "What exactly is the 4th trial?" "The diplomatic challenge," Lyratis replied, "crystalline structures reflecting light in complex patterns. It is rarely implemented because most subjects do not advance beyond the earlier trials." "Diplomatic." Elena couldn't hide her surprise. "That seems less threatening than what I've faced so far." The crystalline structures comprising Lyratis's form shimmered in what might have been amusement. "You misunderstand. The previous trials tested individual capabilities. The diplomatic challenge assesses species-level threat potential through interaction protocols." Before Elena could request clarification, a section of the wall dematerialized, revealing a corridor. "The tribunal awaits." Lyratis gestured toward the opening. Elena followed her guide through a series of chambers that seemed to defy conventional spatial relationships. Distances expanded and contracted unpredictably, and several times she had the distinct sensation of moving through dimensions beyond the standard 3. They emerged into a vast amphitheater filled with representatives from what must have been hundreds of different species. At the center was a raised platform where 5 beings were arranged in a semicircle, including Vex Ithal, whom Elena recognized despite the Archon's fluid geometry. Dr. Elena Reeves of Earth. Vex Ithal's telepathic voice resonated throughout the amphitheater. "You stand before the Evaluation Council for the final determination of your species classification." Elena straightened her posture and addressed the assembly with calm confidence. "I'm ready to proceed. The diplomatic challenge requires you to negotiate with species that have been designated as inherently hostile to your biological classification," explained another council member, a being that resembled a complex arrangement of energetic filaments. "Successful communication without conflict will demonstrate your species' capacity for peaceable integration into the galactic community." A containment field materialized at the edge of the platform, and within it appeared a creature that caused instinctive dread to wash over Elena. It resembled an arachnid, but with additional appendages and a carapace that gleamed with an oily iridescence that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Its multiple eyes fixed on Elena with unmistakable hostility. "The Exerthak," Vex L announced, "a predatory species with natural biological weaponry. Their neural pathways are incompatible with standard telepathic translation. Previous attempts at communication have resulted in violence. You will establish peaceful contact or demonstrate your species' inability to coexist with diversity." Elena observed the creature carefully, noting its defensive posture and the way it tracked her movements. Drawing on her xenobiological training, she recognized patterns in its behavior that reminded her of territorial displays in Earth arachnids. Instead of approaching directly, Elena lowered herself to the floor, reducing her height advantage. She moved slowly, deliberately, keeping her hands visible and her movements predictable. The Exerthak's posture shifted subtly, still defensive, but with reduced aggression. "It's reading my body language," Elena realized. She began a series of slow, rhythmic movements with her hands, establishing a pattern, then gradually introducing variations. The Exerthak watched intently, then, to the apparent shock of the observers, began mirroring her movements with its front appendages. "Remarkable," murmured a council member. "It's responding to kinesthetic communication." Elena continued the movement dialogue, gradually increasing complexity. After several minutes, she introduced vocalizations, not words, but tonal patterns that complemented her movements. The HFY produced clicking sounds in response, matching her rhythm if not her exact tones. I believe we're establishing a rudimentary communication framework, Elena explained to the council without interrupting her exchange with the creature. Your translators failed because they prioritize linguistic or telepathic modalities. This species communicates primarily through movement and vibration patterns. Over the next hour, Elena and the HFY developed an increasingly sophisticated exchange. By the end, they had established meanings for several dozen movement sound combinations, enough for basic concepts like safe, danger, food, and territory. When the containment field finally reactivated, separating them, the HFY performed what Elena had come to understand was a gesture of respect rather than threat. A specific configuration of limbs they had established to mean separate but acknowledge. The amphitheater erupted in a cacophony of communications as the assembled representatives reacted to the unprecedented exchange. The council members communicated among themselves in methods Elena couldn't perceive, but their agitation was evident. This outcome was unanticipated. Vexed, all finally addressed her. You have demonstrated capabilities beyond our classification parameters. Perhaps that's the problem, Elena suggested, emboldened by her success. Your entire evaluation system is based on the assumption that certain evolutionary paths produce predictable behavioral outcomes. You classified humans as dangerous deathworlders because our physical capabilities suggested aggression. But you failed to account for how our environment shaped our cognitive and social evolution. Elena gestured toward the now contained HFY. That being isn't inherently hostile. It's operating according to its evolutionary programming. Once I recognized and respected that, communication became possible. Isn't that the foundation of true diplomacy? A new voice entered the discourse, deep, resonant, and somehow ancient. The human speaks truth that has long been ignored. From the assembly emerged a being of imposing presence, its form shifting between states of matter and rhythmic pulses. Elder Jovex, Vexthal acknowledged, geometric form contracting, in what Elena interpreted as deference. For 12 millennia, I have observed the tribunal's classification system become increasingly rigid. The elder addressed the assembly. We have forgotten the purpose of evaluation, not to control or contain, but to understand and integrate. This human has demonstrated in a single cycle what our council has failed to recognize over eons, that our differences need not be barriers to communication. The elder turned toward Elena. Your species has been misclassified, Dr. Elena Reeves. The very traits that led us to fear you, your adaptability, resilience, and problem-solving under pressure, are precisely what enabled you to succeed where our sophisticated technologies failed. You found common ground with a being we had dismissed as incompatible with peaceful discourse. Murmurs spread throughout the amphitheater as representatives of various species digested this revolutionary perspective. I propose a reevaluation. The elder continued, not just of humans, but of our entire classification paradigm. The crucible has become a tool for reinforcing prejudice rather than discovering potential. Elena recognized a pivotal moment when she saw one. With respect, Elder Jovex, perhaps what's needed isn't just re-evaluation but collaboration. Earth has its own history of misclassifying the unknown as threatening. We've learned, sometimes at great cost, that diversity isn't just to be tolerated but celebrated as a source of strength and innovation. She addressed the entire assembly. Humans don't claim to be perfect. Our history includes terrible conflict and environmental damage. But we've also developed arts, philosophy, and sciences that help us imagine better futures and work toward them together. We seek knowledge not to control but to understand, which is why I was on that research expedition when you found me. The elder's form pulsed with what might have been approval. The human offers wisdom. Perhaps instead of subjects and evaluators, we might become partners in knowledge. Over the next several hours, The formal structure of the assembly dissolved into more open discourse. Elena found herself engaged in conversations with dozens of species, each interaction revealing new perspectives and possibilities. Some remained wary of human potential, but many expressed genuine curiosity about Earth and its inhabitants. As the discussions continued, Elena noticed Lyratis approaching with Vex Ethal. The Archon's geometric form seemed somehow less rigid than before. "The Council has reached a decision," Vex Ethal announced. "Human classification will be provisionally amended from Death World High Risk to Adaptive Collaborative Potential. A delegation will be sent to Earth to establish formal relations, with appropriate precautions but without the previously planned restrictions." Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "That's wonderful news. Thank you." "Do not thank us yet," Vex Ethal cautioned. "This represents an unprecedented deviation from tribunal protocols." Many remain unconvinced. "Change rarely comes without resistance," Elena acknowledged. "But the first step is often the hardest." Indeed, the elder joined them. "And you, Dr. Elena Reeves, will return to Earth as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Tribunal. Your experiences here will help prepare your species for integration into the wider community." Elena considered the magnitude of this responsibility. "I'm a scientist, not a diplomat." "You have proven otherwise," the elder's form pulsed gently. "Sometimes the most profound discoveries occur when we step beyond our self-imposed limitations, a lesson your species seems particularly adept at teaching."